Safety First at the YMCA. Part 1. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration, as well as Wisconsin statutes, regulate information that must be provided to employees who may be exposed to workplace chemicals or bloodborne pathogens in the workplace. While we feel it is important to follow these standards, the reason goes far beyond legal compliance. At the Y, we feel it's important for you to know that you may have some safety exposures. This gives you the opportunity to protect yourself and others. This training, along with the resources and tools you will receive, will help you understand the risks, how to prevent them, and what to do if there is an exposure event. After completing this three-part module, you will be able to identify hazardous chemicals in the workplace, understand the three main bloodborne pathogen diseases, identify universal and standard precautions to protect yourself from bloodborne pathogen exposure, describe the exposure control plan, and explain the WISE procedure for injury, chemical exposure, or bloodborne pathogen exposure reporting. This training is not your only resource. As you go through the material, please jot down any questions that arise. Immediately after the training, contact your supervisor or Honor Jensen in Human Resources with your questions. We are here to make sure you understand the information and are prepared to put safety first at the Y. While the chances of being exposed to hazardous chemicals are fairly minimal for most Y staff, knowing the potential for danger and being prepared to respond is important for all staff, especially anyone designated as a first responder, as well as anyone working in the pools or in housekeeping. In this section, you will learn your rights and responsibilities, how to identify workplace chemicals, and how to understand labels and safety data sheets. Why is this information important to you in your role at the YMCA? With any job, you do have certain rights when it comes to your health and safety. You have the right to receive information and training before you are exposed to hazardous chemicals in the workplace and whenever a hazard changes. You also have the right to receive training on product labels, safety data sheets, safe use of chemicals, and how to protect, report, and address concerns. This information is also important to you because, along with these rights, you have great responsibility. Accountability is yours when it comes to following all instructions and policies and completing all required trainings. Hazardous chemicals are divided into three categories. Health hazards may cause harm to your health, such as illness, skin irritations, and carcinogens. This may be through inhalation or touching skin. Physical hazards would be injury to self or property, such as an explosion. Environmental harm is related to the environment. For example, if we improperly dispose of chemicals, it could negatively impact the environment. Hazardous chemicals also include consumer products when used for a duration and/or frequency greater than the normal consumer. However, it does not include general office supplies, pens, copy toner, whiteout markers, etc. If you have questions or concerns, as always, start with your supervisor. The property manager and human resources can also be of help. Every label must include the following: a product identifier, pictogram, a choice of two signal words, danger or warning, hazard statement, precautionary statement, and supplier information. Knowing these requirements is important for two reasons. One, so you will know what you will find on each label to ensure your safety. The second reason is for compliance. If you are using products that do not contain all of this information, you should stop and make sure to get a label or send it to your supervisor or property manager for proper handling, disposal, or labeling. One way to identify a hazardous chemical is through pictograms. The globally harmonized standard gives us 9 pictograms. Notice that each has a red border. The color is important and required. Also, you should never see a blank red diamond. If you see a pictogram that you are not familiar with or have not been trained in, stop. Do not use the chemical. See your supervisor for further training and/or instruction. While the labels may look different from product to product, each of the 6 elements must be there. They include product identifier, pictograms, signal word, in this case danger, hazard statements, precautionary statements, and supplier information. If the label on the bottle you are using does not contain all of this information, give the container to the property manager, who will then either label the container or properly dispose of the product. Another way to learn about hazardous chemicals is through the SDS or safety data sheet. The intention is, if you have a question on a product, you can review the SDS and easily find the answers. Listed on the left are the 16 sections you will find on a safety data sheet. The items in bold should be known to you before you use any hazardous chemical at work. Always be sure to follow the personal protection suggestions every time you use the product. As noted, there are several non-mandatory items which may or may not be included on the SDS. As always, our SDS will be stored at the front desk in a binder. If you work off-site, you will find it in a central location. Contact your supervisor right away if you do not know where to find your SDS. Let's highlight a few of the most important and urgent pieces of information you will find on every SDS. The first section, Identification, tells you what the product is. Importantly, it will also tell you the proper use of the substance. It is your responsibility to know this information. Section 2 will identify a product's health, environmental, and physical hazards. Where it says GHS label, you will either see pictograms or words to define them, such as flame and crossbones in this case. A signal word will be listed, danger or warning, as well as standardized hazard statements and precautionary statements. Knowing how to respond in an emergency is critically important. Section 4 describes the initial care that should be given by untrained responders to an individual who has been exposed to the chemical. It includes necessary first aid instructions, a description of the most important symptoms or effects and any symptoms that are acute or delayed, recommendations for immediate medical care and special treatment needed when necessary. Reviewing the first aid measures before you use a product could reduce the severity of an injury caused by an exposure. In fact, you could make an injury worse if you treat it the wrong way, or if it takes longer to address it because you have to look up the first aid measures. Reviewing the information on the screen, what should you do if a member ingests the chemical shown? Should you induce vomiting, or will that make it worse? Depending on the hazard, there may be things that you can do to prevent injury or illness from exposure. Engineering controls and personal protective equipment are important to know and follow. If the chemical could be corrosive, for example, it may say that you need to wear protective gloves. Or if there is a chance that you will be splashed in the eye protection is in order. For your safety, you are expected to know and understand the PPE and engineering controls and to follow them. Do you know where to find safety glasses and gloves? If you don't, take a moment on your next shift to find out. Ask your supervisor or property manager. Section 9 details the physical and chemical properties of the product. Hopefully, you will never find a chemical without the proper labeling. But if you do, you need to pull it from use immediately and get a label affixed to the bottle. Typically, the property manager, or if you are off-site, your supervisor, will help you get the proper label. But you should know what you are using. This section tells you what it looks, smells, and feels like to help you identify it. If you are in doubt, the property manager will either verify it or properly dispose of the product. Now that you have the information you need regarding the globally harmonized system, let's apply it to your job. Identify hazardous chemicals surrounding you in the workplace. Ensure proper labels are affixed to all hazardous chemicals. Are they legible? Ensure that there is an SDS on site for every chemical covered by the HAZCOM standard. know where to find it, and how to read it. Understand and follow the policies and procedures as they relate to workplace hazardous chemicals. Be familiar with all the chemicals you encounter to properly use, dispose of, and address accidents or exposure. Notify your supervisor before using any new chemical type to ensure you receive proper training. And follow all instructions and warnings listed on the SDS or product label. Congratulations! You've completed the first section of Safety First at the YMCA. Part 2, Bloodborne Pathogens, is the next step toward completing your training.